Hello everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to some more EVE Online. And I'm currently in Iona, in our real high-sec home base. The reason for this is because Cedar Balnit, one of our real-life friends, has come back, and normally Arvalis is also coming back later this week, so we are probably going to try and do some activities with them, see what they want to explore in EVE Online at the moment. And that's why I am doing some mining here for today's video, which is a new dev blog that was released for EVE Rubicon player-owned customs offices in high-sec, or the high-sec POCOs. Pretty controversial change. A lot of people are complaining about this in the sense that they are afraid nullsec alliances will simply take over all the POCOs, and basically it's like free money for them. But more on that later. First, I'll take a quick look at the devblog itself to see how CCP plans to implement this. So the first part of it is simply stating what a POCO is. It allows people to import and export goods to planetary interaction. Now, how it will work come November 19th with the launch of EVE Online Rubicon. All the customs offices in high-sec will be transferred over to Interbus, which is an NPC corporation, and at that point you'll be free to destroy these customs offices, and then you'll be able, any corporation will be able to put down their own gantries and basically place their own POCOs over there. At which point they can then set the tax rates. In fact, you can set different tax rates for different standings of people. So it's actually pretty useful. Some things to note. Someone was worried about it. You will not lose Interbus standings by doing this. A second thing to note, I think, which is actually pretty important. The fact that another corporation owns the POCO on your planet doesn't mean that you're unable to do any PI. It's just a little bit harder because you have to manually launch everything to the planet, and I think you can't really import anything except through a POCO. But it is still possible to make money through PI, even if someone else owns the POCO and sets the tax rate at like 100% or something like that. And then after that, you need an active war deck if you want to have a shot at shooting the POCO of another corporation. If you don't, actually Concord will come and destroy you for shooting at a POCO while not under a war deck. Let's have a quick look here. Oh yeah, that's pretty important, but this is basically trying to make this system a little bit proof to alt alliances and stuff like that. So they're putting restrictions on the transferring of ownership of POCOs, so that if you're under a war deck, you can't transfer the ownership of your POCOs to another corporation outside of the alliance anymore. So you can't really try and put them safe while you're at war. You have to face the consequence of owning a POCO in high-sec and being war decked. So yeah, this is just basically what it's going to take, because otherwise people would just make an alt, transfer the ownership of the POCOs there, and then actually starting a war deck would be meaningless. POCOs in high-sec will give the owner the exact same controls as POCOs in low-sec. The owner can set the tax rates, like I said, but what's important is right here. The NPC tax will continue on high-sec POCOs. The tax rate stays the same, 10% for export, 5% for import. This is then in addition to whatever tax the player owner sets. So that's something a bit unexpected. I would have thought this to be gone, but they still want to maintain this ISK sync as well. So there will still be an NPC tax. It will be a lot more expensive to export stuff from to high-sec POCO, regardless of the corporation putting the tax rate at 0. I actually think it's a decent solution to the fact that a lot of people were worried that this would just mean a lot more inflation in EVE Online, but the ISK sync actually remains, and it's on additional taxes that the corporation has control. This will be followed by a new skill customs code expertise, which will reduce the NPC tax by 10% per level, so you can go down to 5% for export. This is only for the NPC part of the tax, but yeah, basically who people that are really into PI and produce high-end stuff there, that this will be a skill worth training for them, just so that I can reduce the taxes. Why would they do this and not just slash the taxes? I think it's just to diversify people a little bit and hope that the ISC can actually stay in place for a very large part, and that only the people that are extremely active in PI that will then get lower NPC taxes. The tax base changes, we're adjusting the tax base values for commodities. These have not been touched since they were adjusted based on market values in November 2011. Bit out of sync, so we're reducing the values for all types. So it's actually going to cost a little bit less to actually get stuff from these pocos. So yeah, these are just tweakings, but basic tweaks to the tax system as well. But I think it's pretty important. Something we didn't know during the announcement is that the NPC tax will actually remain. Let me quickly check for my mining here how much is left. Oh, this will actually be done. And then let's grab this big one. So here we go. So yeah, that's basically the dev block. These will become player-owned customs offices, or at least you can first shoot down the interbus one and then put down your own. You can set additional taxes up from the NPC tax, which will pretty much remain the same, maybe a little bit lower than what it is now. And after that, you can war deck other corporations that own a poco and try and destroy it. What was the last part? Oh yeah, and they are of course going to try and make this a little bit as waterproof as they can, so that you can't just transfer your pocos or anything like that. Now the big worry and why this is so controversial to a lot of people, maybe if I go to the comments we will get to see this pretty soon. The big worry is of course right there. Interesting. So how much does a war against Goonswarm cost now again? Yeah, that a big 0-0 alliance would come in to Highsec, destroy all these pocos and just put their own, and then I don't know, set ridiculous tax rates or just make it impossible for people to export PI stuff from their planets through the customs office. This is all possible, of course, and the one worry about this that I share a little bit is that it is extremely expensive to war deck Goonswarm or one of the big alliances, just because the war deck actually goes up with the number of people in the enemy corporation or alliance, and that is indeed a decent point, but I would not be so worried about that as everybody is thinking that one day after the launch of the expansion that we'll see nothing but Goonswarm pocos in Highsec. I don't think it's going to happen quite like that. Granted, Highsec will have to organize itself. I do think if 0-0 alliances decide they want to own pocos in Highsec, that does mean that Highsec players will have to organize in alliances that have at least a certain size to them as well, so that they can actually pay for the war deck and organize a massive cleanup of enemy pocos. So I do think that Highsec will have to organize more, but I don't think that this will be completely one-sided. And a big part of that as well is because although we have to, or Highsec will have to war deck Goonswarm in order to fight their destroy their pocos, the opposite is true as well, of course. If Goonswarm are not the first to destroy all those interbus pocos and other corporations put them there, that means Goonswarm is going to have to put out individual war decks on all of those corporations and alliances as well, just in order to go and destroy them and grind them. This is actually going to be a lot of work as well. I don't think that this should be underestimated. There will be hundreds of corporations that own Pocos all over HiSec, and if Goonswarm, for instance, wants to own all the Pocos in a certain region, well, they will have to put out all of those war decks. And yeah, it's not. I don't think it's just as one-sided as people say. It's not because the nullsec alliances are so big and cost a lot to war deck that it's totally one-sided. In fact, the fact that a lot of small corporations, and damn it, a pirate coming in, a lot of small corporations owning Pocos all over HiSec also means basically that that Goonswarm has to organize a small war against all of these different entities that might strike at different times, have different tactics, all harass them a little bit in the trade hubs and stuff like that. So it's actually going to be a lot of work for people that make their home in nullsec. There are solutions to this, of course, jump clones, alts, etc. But it's going to be a lot of effort, and I do see the potential for HiSec residents to make it very difficult on Goonswarm, especially if they have their Pocos up already. If Goonswarm has to go against player-owned customs offices, it's going to be a lot of work to get all of that done. On the other side, of course, it's true that if at some point a large nullsec alliance does end up owning let's say all the Pocos in a single region, this will mean that the HiSec residents that want to take this over or destroy this stranglehold, they will have to organize in a big alliance, probably an alliance of convenience, just to be able to issue that war deck and have a good chance to go up against a more organized defense, which is of course what you can expect from a nullsec alliance. But overall, personally, I'm very excited for this change, because this is bringing the sandbox into HiSec, and I think it's really going to be very, very interesting. It's also a decently timid step. Keep in mind that the fact that Goonswarm owns a Poco and puts the tax rate at 100% doesn't mean that you can't export stuff from the planet anymore. It's just not as handy as the Poco anymore. You need to launch it into space and then pick it up. But it is still very much possible, and I do think that the war deck mechanic is a double-edged sword. While for HiSec corporations and alliances, it's a big cost and it will require a lot of organization to do, to fight a war like that. On the other hand, a nullsec alliance might be in a situation where they have to issue dozens of war decks against entities they don't really know a lot about. This means that more corporations can actually join in that big war right there against Goonswarm, and I don't think it's going to be as one-sided as people are making it out to be at the moment in the comments. In fact, I think it's going to be a very, very interesting time, and I do expect, because potentially there's a lot of money to be made right there, not as much as we first thought because of the NPC tax, but still potentially a lot of money, that we will probably see HiSec power blocks slowly form, probably not as cohesive as the nullsec alliances, but for the specific purpose of countering a nullsec alliance trying to take over HiSec Pocos. I do think that this is a possibility, that you'll see HiSec coalitions form just for this express purpose, and I think bringing more war to HiSec it's a very interesting and potentially a really good thing, because at the moment a lot of new players, you know, all they see about those big EVE Online battles is nullsec stuff on YouTube probably, and then when they ask what does it take to get into a battle like that, oh well, you have to go to nullsec. If they're Care Bears, they're not going to do that, but now they might just witness battles around Pocos all of a sudden with dozens of ships fighting each other, and this I think will make the sandbox a lot more accessible to newer players as well. So I'm trying to look at this from both sides. I agree that the war deck of a major alliance is a big threshold, because that's going to cost a lot of ISK. but I do think HiSec can organize itself and probably will organize itself to counter such an event, and that a lot of these mechanics are actually double-edged swords that also cause problems to the nullsec alliances that actively want to chase that poco money. I don't think it's going to be all that easy for them either. Anyways, there you go guys, that's it for this dev blog. Let me quickly push the back button. The player-owned customs offices in HiSec, they are coming. If you're for it or against it, you know, we'll have to wait and see a little bit. I think that there's a lot of arguments for this being a good change, bringing more content and more fun wars and destruction to EVE Online. I do understand the worries of complete domination by nullsec alliances, but to that my personal opinion is that HiSec will have to harden the fuck up and organize themselves to counter this. I actually think they have the numbers for it, and that there are dedicated leaders and corporations that will rise up to such a challenge. And so I think that this is a very interesting change, and it could make EVE Online after the expansion a very interesting place, even in HiSec, which at the moment is extremely static and extremely boring. So I'm really looking forward to this change in EVE Online Rubicon. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.